Good evening and welcome to Live at 5 with me, Raj Doshi. I hope you're all well and enjoying this miserable, cold, rainy day out here in Perth, but you'll enjoy today's show. So sit up, relax and get all those comments coming through on your feed so that I can ask as many questions as I can today to our special guest. So without further ado, I shall begin. So, who's on the show today? We have a very interesting character who's going to tell us a lot more about him in a minute. So, without further ado, I'll introduce Mark Gibson to everybody. Here we go. Here he comes. Hello, Mark.
Hi, Raj. How you going?
Yes, we finally got the technology to work. We literally, within 60 seconds, we had left to do this. So I'm so glad that we were able to get connected and we can hear you and we can see you today. How are you?
Great. Yeah, I'm well, thank you. Sorry about all that technical issues for people watching. Tried to connect with the iPad and the computer, and we had no sound. So now we're just on the little iPhone. So hopefully this is visible and audible, and it's all okay.
It's absolutely perfect. Thank you. That's brilliant. So yeah, we're going to talk to you today a little bit about the Lord Mayor stuff that you're looking to do, and you're hopeful to getting yourself. Oh my God, I'm all in a fluster now because we've panicked and we've done it all last minute. Right. Okay. Let's start again. So yeah, we're just going to talk to you today a little bit about what your expectations and what you hope for the future of the city of Perth, and looking forward to the elections coming up in October for Lord Mayor. So we'll talk a little bit about that and a little bit about what you like and what you want to do and what you want to change. So we'll crack on with the show. So let's start with our first item. So, how long have you lived in East Perth, and what kind of links do you have to the city? What do you love so much about it that you want to put yourself forward for Lord Mayor?
Yeah, most of it comes down to the fact that I have lived in the city for so long. So I've lived since 2001, 19 years. I've lived in either East Perth, West Perth, or Perth. My current address is Perth, 6000. I live over on Stirling Street. For about 9 or 10 of those years, I lived in East Perth at a couple of different places. So I certainly know and love East Perth. But I guess after all these years, and running for Lord Mayor is something that I've thought about a fair bit over the years. And then it was always one of those things, maybe if the time's right, when the time's right. And I finally got to the point this year where I thought, you know what, the time's right, because what an opportunity it is to start afresh. We don't have a council. We haven't had an elected council for more than 2 years. And I know that as a ratepayer, that's frustrating. As a resident, we want to see things happen. It feels like we've been in this holding pattern for so long. So I have just always loved living in the city, but wanted to see it get better. And we can do so much more, and we can do so much better. And I just think with my history of living here for so long, of stepping outside every single day and immersing myself in the city, and talking to people, my neighbours, fellow residents, business owners, people I know, just about some of the things they want to see happen. So I know we'll get onto some of those issues and what I want to see done and what I want to help do. But I guess, yeah, it's that passion for the city that really drove me towards wanting to run.
So a lot of people choose to go to the suburbs and live in their big houses and enjoy living on the coast. What is it actually about the city? What is the heart for you for the city that pushes you and draws you back in?
Well, I'll tell you a secret. When I was in my 20s, I lived in Sydney. So I moved, I'm born and bred in Perth, lived away for a few years in Sydney in my 20s. And that was like, wow, big city, here we are. When I moved home to Perth, I remember thinking, I don't want to live out in the suburbs. I've experienced big city life. I'm back home where I want to be. And so I thought, let's try living in the city. And back then, 2001, I bought my first apartment in West Perth. And I thought, wow, not many people in Perth live in the city. Now, that has grown, but sadly by nowhere near enough. I know we're getting up, in the whole city of Perth, we're getting up towards 30,000 residents. It should be way more than that. I want to see tens of thousands more people live here. So for me, it's having the easy access to things like transport, restaurants, cafes, bars, nightlife, all of that appeals to me. The hustle and bustle of the city appeals to me.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But we need to make it more appealing to residents. And that's done by things like making it cleaner and safer and improving transport, improving life for pedestrians, for cyclists. I want to do all those things so that it makes it so much more livable for people. So I love living here, but it can be so much better.
Absolutely, absolutely. And we've got a little question come up here. Somebody's having a little peek in the background and they've noticed that you have a few trophies there.
Well, this is so funny. As we said, we were just quickly at last minute getting a shot together. So I don't know what you can see. I've got a nice little phone screen now. We did have the computer. So I'm in my home office, and I guess the trophies are from my journalism career over the years. Different awards that I've won for broadcasting. So that's what you might be able to see. Sorry about that.
Excellent. And what's been your highlight in your career that you've had so far? Your 30 years in journalism. What would be your biggest moment?
Oh, that's really hard. I mean, I've always loved broadcasting live, which is what we're doing now, effectively. Slightly smaller audience, but I'm sure this is a very big audience as well. I love broadcasting live. I guess there's the highs and the lows. Everything from covering things like the Olympic Games, which have just been enormous and massive and full of good stories and happy stories, and then I've seen the other end of life as well, and I've covered terrorism events. I was one of the first reporters on the scene of the Bali bombings back in so things like that where you just see the worst of humanity, and then I've seen the best of humanity and everything in between. I mean, and then some amazing moments like all the hosting duties I've done at Telethon over the years, right here in the centre of Perth. Those sorts of things have been absolute highlights as well.
Excellent. Right, we will go on to the next item. So these are just some of the questions that have come through over the week. So why is it Lord Mayor? Why do you feel that role is something that you want to be a part of? And what experiences have you had that you feel will allow you to fulfill that role to its complete?
I think everything that sort of got me to this point so far. So those experiences include all my lived experiences in the city. But don't get me wrong, as a journalist and a senior journalist in an organisation for the past 20 years, I've had to make a lot of serious decisions that affect, both financially, the bottom line of the company. Legally, I have grappled with issues on a daily basis. All of those things have helped. I've led teams of reporters. I've mentored younger members of staff. I feel that I am a really collaborative person to work with, and I want to bring out the best in people around me. So those sorts of leadership skills have been developed over many years. And then I've also done a lot of voluntary and charity work for different organisations in and around the city. And one of the ones I've been most passionate about was Open House Perth. When Open Perth started in 2012, I was their inaugural ambassador, and I had that role for 5 years. And so that's a voluntary role, just doing everything I could to promote the city, to promote the event, to promote architecture, to promote design. And then I got to the point where I was just volunteering, taking people on walking tours around the city because I love it so much and I know it so well. I was in and around buildings and around the city. So all of those experiences have got me to this point where I look at our city now. I look like this because I'm looking out the window and I can see the city. So I've got to this point where I know the city so well, but I just passionately want to see it get better. And a lot of that is COVID related, so just post COVID, we're going to need someone who can absolutely help get businesses back on their feet, can help residents who are doing it tough as well. So whatever I can do in that regard really excites me too.
Excellent. That's lovely. And in terms of what is the one thing, if somebody was to ask you for your campaign, what is that one thing that you stand for, that one driver? Obviously, community being the key to everything, but what is the one thing that you want to see from this happen? What the one thing?
I think that, if I could sum it up in one thing that I really stand for and believe in, I would say it is about invigorating our city. I want spaces activated. I want dead parts of town brought to life. I want to see it invigorated. Now, when I launched my campaign, announced that I was running just over a week ago, I stood down on Langley Park. Now, I used to live across the road from Langley Park. So I know it so well. And I loved having it on my doorstep, and I loved being able to go for a jog around the river. But the longer I lived there, I just kept thinking, why have we got this big empty patch of grass with absolutely nothing on it? And I know that's kind of appealing to look at, but it's not appealing to use in any way. And I just started thinking that's a classic example of what we could do to improve the city. So since I said that, and since I launched my candidacy down on Langley Park a week ago, I've had so many messages from people, and even the people who at first said, oh no, leave it alone, that's what's unique about it. I think I've managed to bring them around, because I explained I'm not talking about huge development. I'm not talking about putting high rise in front of people's views. All I'm talking about is activating that space. So
yes,
that stretch of grass is almost 1 kilometre, and it's got nothing on it. I want to see gardens. I want to see trees. I want to see shade so that people can sit out there in summer, which you currently can't do. You just can't use it. I want to see a basketball court, a tennis court, potentially a swimming pool. Wouldn't that be cool? Like
amazing.
all these ideas that we just need. And you know, I've got a lot of this from talking to people again just over this past week, where I've put it out there and said, let's do something amazing with Langley Park. And people have gone, yeah, let's do that. So that's just an example of one of the areas of the city that I think could just be done so much better.
And I think that's a really good point you raised, because as a part of the Terrace working group, the Terrace Precinct working group with John Carey and Anne-Marie and the East Perth Community Group, we're predominantly based along the Adelaide Terrace and the Terrace Roadside. And the biggest thing that people had was that, what do you do with Langley Park? Langley Park's there. Why are we not using it? It's on our doorstep. So I think to be a part of that and to be a part of that development would be amazing, because there really is a demand and there is a need for it. There are a lot of young families here in the city that have very little in terms of being able to go out and enjoy those spaces to their full potential.
Absolutely. There it is. It's on the river. It's across the road. The views are amazing. It sits there. And I know, because I lived there for years, and I just marveled at how little it was used. And a lot of that does come down to things, as I say, like the fact that there's just nowhere to sit. There's no shade.
Yes.
So Perth's climate means you've got to make that a bit more. And by shade, I even just mean trees. Let's plant some trees and beautiful gardens and get some landscape architects to come up with some amazing designs. There's just so much we could do there.
Absolutely. It's very, very true. So being Lord Mayor, a big question that a lot of people had was, would this be something that would be a full-time job for you, or would it be something that you would be taking on as with other work as well, or would this be 100% focus? So what's your plans if you are successful?
No, I've made that very clear that I will be a 100% full-time Lord Mayor. And my work at the moment is a few little different bits and bobs of broadcasting through TV, radio. I also do a lot of speaking and emceeing work. So when all the events are getting back up and running at the football, I'm one of the main MCs each week for the West Coast Eagles. I do a lot of all these extra bits of work, and I've already made that very clear. I'll give it all up to be Lord Mayor. I mean, A, because I feel so passionately about it, and B, because I believe it's a full-time job. I don't believe you can be the Lord Mayor for a couple of hours a day. I just don't think that's practical. I'm prepared to give it a 100% commitment. And in fact, I really look forward to doing that, to having a bit of a change of path and throwing myself into this role that I just feel so passionately about.
Excellent. And I think that's a really, really big point, because a lot of people have had a lot of questions about people potentially wanting to be candidates or currently are candidates for the role, but where their position is in terms of, is it going to be something they dedicate their 100% to, or it's just going to be along the sides of whatever they do else?
Yeah, no, I can't emphasise that enough. I think there are a couple of the key points that I have tried to emphasise so far. It's only been a week in, but just to say to people, look, I do live and breathe the city. I haven't just moved here to run. I've lived here for 19 years.
Yes.
And I will do this full time. It is my absolute commitment. So I can only reiterate that here tonight with you.
Fantastic. And so your campaign trail, when does it kick off, and what kind of things are you going to be doing to connect with the community and getting to know the people that will be potentially voting for you? So elections are October the 17th, is that correct?
That's how it's looking, yeah. So just just waiting on this final report, I guess, to be handed down into the from the inquiry into the previous council. I think we'll get a bit more clarity at the end of June.
End of June.
Yeah, but the minister has certainly said that he's aiming for October 17. That's traditionally that Saturday in October is when local government elections are held. So actually it's the 17th, isn't it? Yeah, today. So that's 4 months. 4 months.
Yeah, it's not long.
Yeah, so that's why I decided it was time to run. I know other people have been talking about it a lot and umming and ahhing. I just decided, don't worry about what other people are doing. Put this out on the table. Go for it. But when you ask me, it's funny, Raj, I've never done this before. This is something I really feel strongly about, but I've never done a political campaign before. So 4 months, I am just, and I've been doing it in the past week, is just talking to as many people as I can, but mainly listening. So I've been meeting with a lot of business owners around near me, a lot of residents and neighbours. I'm in an apartment block and I speak to my neighbours, and a few of whom are really excited that I'm running, and we've spoken about some ideas, and I've just listened to people from my cafe across the road. I said to them, what do you want from a council? They've already given me a few tips, and it's just speaking to as many people as possible. I'm going to give you here's a hot scoop. I just got back from the printers about an hour ago. That was part of our voice, and I've got my new business cards printed up. That's the front. I don't know if you can see.
Hey, there you go, guys. There you go. Hot off the press.
Hot off the press. I've got the it's a double-sided business card, so I'll hold it up to the camera of me on the front and a beautiful shot of the city.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah,
I love that.
A friend of mine took that with a drone and gave me permission to use it. So it's a really cool image.
Oh, wow. And that just sums up that perfect sunset.
Doesn't it? So
yeah.
My new business cards that have just arrived. So I'm going to be handing them out everywhere.
Excellent.
And I will. Living in the city like this, and a lot of people do live in apartments, it's hard sometimes. You can't just knock on doors very easily. So, I'll be getting flyers done up and dropping them in letterboxes and hoping to just speak to as many people as possible, because I've got lots of ideas, but I really want to listen to what everyone else wants as well. And that's why I launched my Facebook page last Monday when I announced I was running as well. So have a look at that, Mark Gibson, Perth.
Absolutely.
Have a look at that. And that's a great place to share ideas, just like this forum now. I met with Anne-Marie from your group just the other day, and I'm meeting with Steve from the West Perth group tomorrow. And
excellent.
Yeah, I just want to meet with as many people as possible and really talk about what they want from their council and their Lord Mayor.
Brilliant. And hopefully maybe in the coming weeks, as this COVID stuff relaxes that bit more, it would be amazing if you pop down to maybe one of the community group sessions that we have, or a workout session, because they're really productive and we get a lot of ideas and thoughts and things down. So that would be really, really, really good if you did.
Absolutely. And especially I love the idea of the walking group, because I walk everywhere. So I want to come and join that on a Sunday morning and go for a walk and meet lots.
Just make sure you've got a rain mac. It's rained a lot.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Well, fingers crossed. This weekend looks okay. Might be all right.
Yeah, but it's a great way to be able to just connect with the people on the floor and just know exactly what people want. Yeah. Doing it that way in a more relaxed environment, I think it'd be a great thing to do. So the next time we have a workout session or something, we'll definitely give you a shout, and hopefully we can exchange some really good ideas.
Yeah, perfect. That sounds good.
So we've talked about this already. You are a resident, so the question around this one was really, what do you want from the council? So from the council perspective, not as Lord Mayor, but as a resident who resides in the city, what do you want from the council to be able to give us? Obviously money is the biggest one, because with the money we can do things, but different from what they've done previously, what can the council do differently to make a change this time and stand out?
Yeah, that's a good point, because as a ratepayer, obviously councils, traditionally you pay your rates, you get your rubbish collected. It can be fairly stock standard. You get your facilities in the suburbs. With Perth, there's something different because we are in the city. And I think for too long, the city of Perth has been too focused on business and not focused enough on residents. So as a ratepayer, a residential ratepayer, I want better facilities for residents. I want better footpaths. I want better lighting. I want to feel safer. I want better access to cycle paths. I ride my bike around the river down near you guys in East Perth, but I don't get to ride it much anywhere else around the city because I don't feel too safe on the road. I'm not a full-on cyclist by any means. I don't wear but I do like to go for a recreational ride, and we're really limited with what we can do with that. So that's, as a resident, I want to see better connectivity with our transport. The cat buses are great. I would love to expand them, make them, take them further around our city, make it more connected. Everything's still a bit disparate. It's not quite connecting well enough. They're the sorts of things as a resident. And just the cleanliness, I walk through the city all the time. And again, this week I noticed just like dead shrubs and plants along the terrace and in the city, bins that are overflowing with rubbish on the weekends because they haven't been cleaned. Just all those things that make it just turn people off. We need to make it just more livable for residents. And yes, business is very important. We're a capital city, CBD, all the rest of it. But we've got to get that focus on residents. If we want to increase the residential population, which we really need to do, then we've got to look after our residents as well.
Absolutely. And we want that sort of bustling city. We want it to be like the other big cities around the world. It's noticeable for being a city and not just a coastal kind of holiday place.
Yeah, absolutely. And that gets us on to, I don't know what your next questions are, but I would love to address the point that we need something big and some big, bold attractions as well.
Yeah, so we do have a couple of those coming up. But one of the biggest things that I wanted to ask you was around that there are a few things that the members of the group had questions around. And the biggest one was homelessness and antisocial behaviour in the area. So I know that's a collaborative thing. It's not just one person who's going to fix that. But what are the biggest issues that you feel that if you are appointed that you would wish to address sort of first and foremost on your list?
Yeah, well, homelessness is obviously a big one, and I think it became more noticeable. I don't know if it was worse, but it became more noticeable during COVID and when people were working from home, because I know when I stepped outside and I was limiting it and I would just go to the supermarket and do what I was doing, I really thought, oh my goodness, the homelessness has just got so much worse. And then I thought, oh, it's just that there aren't many people around.
That's right, yeah.
More obvious, but it has been bad for a long time. And you're right, no one's going to fix it in an instant. It is a difficult subject. And I'm sure you've heard other people say before that at the end of the day, housing is a state government responsibility. But I would love to work with the state government to say, hey, we have buildings lying empty in the city of Perth. What can we do about that to offer some short-term accommodation for the homeless? It will always be a problem to some extent. There will always be a tiny population of people who want to live on the street for whatever reason. That's a small number.
Mm-hmm.
But others through circumstance who find themselves there, first and foremost, we need to be compassionate. We can't just go in and want to move them on and make it somebody else's problem. We can't do that. We need to act with compassion, and I really, really believe that strongly. But we have places, thinking of East Perth End again, and not far from where I used to live, there's that backpackers place on Adelaide Terrace, exclusive backpackers, where they had the fire.
Yes.
That's been lying empty for all that time. What's that, a year or more?
Probably, yeah.
Yeah, I'm just thinking out loud a bit here, but there are these buildings that we have and we could do something with. Rather than lying empty, why can't we offer some short-term accommodation to people to help them out? So, look, as you quite rightly say, it is a complex issue. It will to some extent remain for a long time, but I would love to get in and try to make a difference to it and to offer some solutions in terms of some buildings, just using some buildings for a better use than lying there empty. So that's a start, and dealing with the state government to really come up with a way forward. But like I say, COVID made things worse. There's just before COVID, there were some good things being done to sort of bring together some of these service providers. I know a lot of the problem historically has been all these different, very well-meaning groups, but acting very independently of each other.
Absolutely, yeah.
If we can bring people together, everyone on the same page, and really, work collaboratively, I think that's going to make a big difference as well.
Do you think possibly sort of the journalism background that you have will have a little bit more of an influence on relationships that you will create with state and federal governments? Because obviously it's all about those relationships and those methods of communication that can make things happen. So do you think that will help?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, I've had a really good working relationship with the state government and the opposition. As a journalist, you deal with both sides of politics, obviously, but the government has been in power now for almost 4 years. Well, they're coming up to an election, aren't they? Early next year. But I have a really good relationship with the government. I phoned the Premier personally to tell him that I would be announcing that I was running for Lord Mayor, and he was really encouraging of that and reminded me that he started off in local government down in Rockingham, where he was the deputy mayor for a few years in Rockingham before he decided to make the move into state politics. Now, state politics doesn't interest me at all. I'm totally committed to do this on a local government level. But it was really good to have that conversation, to have the encouragement of him to run. He said he thought I would do a great job. So I do have that good relationship. But a point I want to make on that is it's all well and good to have a good relationship and be able to pick up the phone to the Premier, but you've also got to stand up to the government. And I think the government has been running the city of Perth for these past couple of years. And I think it is going to need someone with a good relationship with them to get in there and take over as mayor and be on the council, because they're used to running it their own way. They've had their commissioners in there. They're running the city. They need a pretty strong mayor to come in and say, okay, back off. We're running the show now. We want to talk to our community. We want to make decisions as a council. We want to get the best for our ratepayers. And now you just take the back seat and we'll take care of this and we can work together.
Yeah, I mean, looking into it, as I looked into it, I was amazed at the number of buildings in the CBD and in and around the city limits that are actually state owned. So it's not even a conversation to be had because we can't touch them. So I think that's a really, really good point, that relationship needs to be there to allow us to activate the areas that we necessarily can't normally get to because they're nothing to do with the city and the ratepayer.
Yeah, and the point always is with the City of Perth, when I make that distinction about it being the City Council, obviously a lot of the decisions you need to make are reliant on the state government and on state government funding. That's just a fact of life, and that's what I'd be looking to do, especially when I start talking about locations like Elizabeth Quay and what we're going to do there. I mean, that's very reliant on the state, but as council, we can certainly get in there and we can go into bat for what we believe is the big attractions that we do need, be that at Elizabeth Quay, be that redoing Langley Park. These are decisions that can be made between state and local government.
Yeah, so the last thing we wanted to talk about were these ideas, these big ideas for the city. I've got one that I'm going to mention at the very end, but I want to ask you about your big ideas for the city first, please.
Okay, well, yeah, I've mentioned Langley Park. I think that's just waiting to happen, and there's a lot done down there to turn that into something amazing. Elizabeth Quay, yes, we do need a big attraction. Let's be honest, there's nothing at Elizabeth Quay. How many of us have had interstate or overseas friends, I'll put my hand up, taking them to Elizabeth Quay, and you walk around and do a lap and they go, it's beautiful, but what do we do? Like, what's here? There's nothing there. So yes, there's more development, and yes, it's an ongoing project, and we knew that was going to take 10 years to really flourish, but it's just they're now building office towers, and there's a couple of bars, and there's nothing else there. We need to use that so much better. I've long been a supporter of the cable car up to Kings Park. I know not everyone.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
I think it's a really good idea to maximise things like that view. I think it would be spectacular to travel.
It would be stunning.
Up and down. It would be spectacular. Now, I also believe, while I'm on the cable car, that rather than just go to the top and at that entrance to Kings Park and around near the War Memorial where everybody visits, I'd love to see it have a couple of extra stops into Kings Park. So
onto trails, Yeah,
so it could take people further in towards the DNA Tower and around past the Botanic Gardens, but just to get people into what is an amazing location. But a lot of people only really go kind of Fraser Ave and the War Memorial and around there, admire the view and then go home. So what a great opportunity to take a cable car and take people further. But getting back to the Elizabeth Quay end, I think, imagine being a tourist and then coming down from Kings Park, travelling back down to Elizabeth Quay, having this amazing view, but then getting to Elizabeth Quay and going, now what do we do?
Absolutely.
So that's where I know there's been this talk in the past couple of days. The Committee for Perth have done some great work in really trying to find out what people want. And I know this Indigenous cultural centre and museum, gallery and performance space, and that's appealing. I mean, they've surveyed people. That seems to be something that a lot of people want. If that's the landmark we need, then great. But let's make it an incredible building as a structure. I'm all about great design, great architecture. And really, when we think about this fact that we are heading towards WA's bicentenary in 2029, now, if I'm lucky enough to get in as Lord Mayor, it's almost going to be 2021. And then it's going to be 8 years until our 200th birthday. That's not long.
Yeah, it's not long at all.
It's
No.
not that far away. So let's do this. This is once in a lifetime stuff to get this right. So, I mean, I'm old enough to remember, I'm sure some of the viewers and the residents are too, that when it was our 150th in 1979. But I still remember the T-shirt with the swan on it. Let's bring that. So, yeah, it really is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, though, to get this right. And we've got to activate and invigorate Perth with some big ideas. And, yeah, more of these, plans and ideas, and that's not what we need. We need some action on it. Even the Indigenous,
absolutely,
the Cultural Museum down at Elizabeth Quay, that's been spoken about for years, since Colin Barnett was Premier. And still, we're releasing reports and talking about it. Let's get in there and just do stuff. That's what I really want to do.
Excellent. Well, so I'm going to share with you something that I was quite intrigued by this week, which I learned about Perth, seeing as I've only been here for 5 years. And it was, do you know what happened on February the 20th in 1962 in Perth?
February the 20th, 1962. Well, I wasn't born then. No.
It was a big event. It was a big event in Perth.
1962. The Empire Games were on.
No, it was the American astronaut, John Glenn. He was the first American to travel and orbit the Earth. And Perth was the first city in the world that was named the City of Lights because everybody switched their lights on and he saw it from space. And that really resonated when I read that story because I thought, the City of Lights, we see the Matagarup, we see Elizabeth Quay, but we sure as hell do not see enough of the City of Lights. And it's just such a beautiful city that we could encourage people to walk around and look at those lights. And I think we need to do a lot more of that and bring that name back.
I couldn't agree more, Raj. It's such a brilliant idea. You got me on the date, but I do know of the event. we were known as the City of Lights. And when you say that to people who come now, they're kind of like, well, why? Where are the lights? And we do have some, you're right. I mean, Matagarup Bridge, I would say Council House, if that would happen to become my new office. Beautiful LED lights and a classic building. Yeah, but I couldn't agree more in terms of let's light up the city. Let's have a lighting display. I know someone on my new Facebook page had mentioned having a festival of lights. Great idea. The lights you could do and the lighting over the river, over the city buildings. Let's do it. I love thinking big. I love doing that. And if we're going to be the City of Lights, let's bring it back and let's do that before we do reach that 200th birthday.
Well, exactly. And the 60th anniversary to that, just putting it out there, will be February the 20th, 2022. So that's within time. And the other thing is that with the Terrace Precinct Group, we are looking at the entry statement for East Perth from the causeway. So the bridge is going to be quite a big focal point that we're looking to put possibly light installations. We're coming up with ideas at the moment, but lights seems to be the key. We want to bring back the City of Lights.
Yes, that's a great opportunity there. But I also love what's happened at Claysbrook there with that underpass.
It's fantastic.
It's only temporary, right? Can we keep it?
I think there might be talks about it staying a little longer than people anticipated. So yeah, good news ahead with that possibly. But I haven't confirmed that. I'm not sure, but I know there are talks.
It's awesome. It looks so good. So that's the sort of thing we're talking about, right? Lighting displays that just because they add to our sense of community, but they also can add to safety. If we're lighting up areas, it's less likely to be trouble caused there.
Absolutely.
So many benefits. So yeah,
young families like to go on scooter rides and look at lights. So it encourages people to be healthy and walking around and meeting their neighbours and being a part of a community. So it's definitely food for thought.
Yeah, and on the lights, you just reminded me that one of the business owners I spoke to the other day said, quite randomly, because we're not coming up to Christmas time, but she said, oh, by the way, the Christmas lights, the decorations and the lights are really old and daggy. Let's get some really amazing Christmas lights back and light up the city at Christmas time. And I was like, yeah, great. Let's do it.
Yeah. So there's some really fantastic ideas, and it's been so lovely speaking to you today. So thank you so much, and I will get your details on this feed so that if anybody has any feedback, any questions they wish to ask you, they've got direct contact.
Yes,
so I shall do that.
Please do.
And
go to my Facebook page, Mark Gibson Perth, or Mark Gibson for Lord Mayor, but the address is Mark Gibson Perth. Please go there and give it a like, and always shoot me a message, give me a ring, email, whatever you want to do, because I'd love to speak to as many people as possible. It's great. And thanks for having me.
Oh, you're most welcome. Hopefully we will see you at one of the community events very, very soon.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
All the best, Mark. Thank you so much for your time today, and enjoy the rest of your evening. And thank you for everybody for listening, and I'll catch you all next week. Thank you.